Hey everybody, Robert Dunt, arttop10.com, and here we are outside Tate Modern in London, about to head into this Cezanne exhibition, which you can see behind me, and which should be absolutely mega. So let's go for it. And here we are at the Cezanne exhibition at the Tate, and we have just wandered in. And you got quite a nice little quote from Cezanne up here: "With an apple I will astonish Paris," which is of course one of the things he said. And well, I think Cezanne's absolutely amazing, and he did astonish everybody with the apples. Obviously a lovely painting here, Basket of Apples, 1893. I think you've got little hints of sort of contemporary art discussing these things. You've got like Luke Timons here on the wall discussing how a still life is not a portrait nor is it a landscape. However it was, and maybe still is perceived as the lowest denominator with painting as a discipline. I suppose you could say that. I mean, although you've got to say Braque and Picasso used still life to do amazing things, and Cezanne pretty much changed the way you saw with it. I don't know, sometimes I find these exhibitions so hard. It's always trying so hard to make a point, and as ever, it's about Cezanne, but they're trying to, show him in a new light, etc. There's another quote from up there: "I paint as I see as I feel. They also feel and still like me, but they don't dare. I dare." Yeah, you've got to have these nice bits of him. I mean, he generally was kind of a radical. Pretty much ignored his whole life, I'd say. But the paintings are astonishing. Look at that crazy one there. He looks so grumpy. Grumpy, but enigmatic. And look at that sort of essentially horrible painting in the background. The weird beige and red bits in the background. And this what year is this? 1875. But portrait of the artist with the pink background. Let me just give you a quick little brief burst from the introduction. Paul Cezanne is one of the most highly regarded and enigmatic artists of the late 19th century. By approaching painting as a process and investigation where uncertainty plays an integral role, he gave this medium a new lease of life. Cezanne linked the formal process of art making he called realization to his personal experiences or sensations. His work was always strongly resonated with other artists, and this legacy continues into the present day. Anyway, intriguing. Let's move on through into this next room. It's quite dark in here, but hopefully the GoPro will pick it up. There's also a lecture going on here at the moment, so in a moment I will continue my own chit-chat. So we're into the second room, titled Becoming Cezanne. It's quite interesting. In 1861, 22-year-old Cezanne's future lay at a crossroads. His father wanted him to remain in his hometown of Aix-en-Provence in southern France and pursue a career in law. His school friend, the writer Émile Zola, who had established himself in Paris, encouraged Cezanne to join his avant-garde creative circle and pursue an artistic career. Cezanne chose the latter, but he would never truly settle in Paris. Living between Provence and Paris became a lifelong habit that strongly influenced his working practice, style and career. Zola was his mega friend, basically, and apparently when Zola died, even though they fell out, because Zola wrote, what was that book? Yeah, I can't remember. He wrote a book about a failed painter, essentially. It was pretty brutal, and obviously took a lot from Cezanne's life. Anyway, they obviously remained lifelong friends, although they never really spoke to each other after that, I don't think. But when Émile Zola died, Cezanne locked himself up in a room for a few days. There's a few references to the point that he was in a city, and the city gave Cezanne access to the resources he needed to thrive as an artist. Kind of stuff you've always got to lever in to try and say that, the city is relevant to artists. I'm sure it is. It's relevant to everybody. Anyway, let's have a little look at these pictures. So if you look at the one over here, this is one of his early ones, where you've still got all the crazy violence to it. Look, somebody being stabbed and all this sort of stuff. Totally mad picture, to a degree horribly painted, with a weird sort of dark colours, and the figures are all almost a bit weird, messed up Van Gogh style. But obviously these are his weird early ones, and this is absolutely bizarre, this one, look at it, really weird painting. The Battle of Love, it's called. I mean, What a strange thing. But even within this early painting, even though it's got these weird figures, that could be a dog attacking somebody in the corner, it's still got the beautiful colours to it. They still resonate, the colours out of here, and you've still got that dashy sort of, not quite blocky, but dashy kind of style in the painting. There's another genuinely bizarre one. Look at that. Look at that gigantic figure on the left, like a sort of huge thing trampling through the image. And it's weird. It's meant to be a sort of idyllic scene, but it's genuinely bizarre. But I guess that's what's absolutely brilliant about Cezanne. He is just extraordinary. Look at that one. What is that called? I need to go back and find the titles for these. That's actually, they're quite extraordinary. Let's go back down here, try and get that title. So they were Battle of Love, Three Bathers, An Afternoon in Naples. Quite extraordinary, absolutely bizarre little paintings, frankly. And then the last one along here, Nude Woman. Oh, I see, that could be later in the Swan. Gotta say, he's still painting these things rather beautifully. One of Cezanne's most puzzling paintings, it says, the inspiration for the naked woman was once thought to be Leda from Greek mythology. Recent research has revealed a different source, a champagne label. Oh, that's quite cool. It's quite funny. So you got the champagne label that relates to this picture. Its brand name Nana mirrors the title of Zola's celebrated novel written in 1880. Nana details the scandalous life and downfall of a Parisian sex worker and actor. Intriguing painting. Got a real sort of softness to the colours of those part of the body. Once again, that is absolutely genuinely bizarre. What is that figure doing? Stuck in there. But even underneath that, you've got those beautiful, beautiful colours at the bottom. Quite extraordinary. I'm not entirely sure which way I'm going to be going around this room. But I think we're going to go back down here. Well, I want to get over to these lovely paintings over there, frankly. There's one over there, that's from MoMA, still life with fruit dish, but you can only film that from a distance. Rooftops, Paris. Look at that, that's almost like a sort of... Well, when you come up close, there's not much to it. It's still quite light and simple. But almost reminds you a bit of like William Coldstream or something like that. Lovely earthy colours buried in there. Stroll on through. Rooftops in Paris. Oh, sorry, that was Rooftops in Paris. This is Turn in the Road. Look at that. These ones are more extraordinary. They're beginning to get a bit more cubisty in these rooftops, which obviously is a huge bit of those paintings of the rooftops that led to Cubism. I don't know if they even mentioned Cubism in this exhibition. Must have been a bit bizarre if they don't. But what is interesting though is these are where Cezanne met Pissarro, which he did in 1861 at the Académie Suisse. Though Cezanne continued to spend time in the south between 1872 to 82, the two often lived near each other in Pontoise and Auvers-sur-Oise, just out of Paris. Here they worked side by side, learning by watching each other paint. Pissarro was 9 years older than Cezanne. He once wrote, "Pissarro was like a father to me." Cezanne adopted a lighter and more colourful palette from Pissarro. He also learned how to treat proximity and distance with care on a two-dimensional picture plane. By the early 80s, Cezanne developed his signature technique of considered parallel brushstrokes that permitted him to render his sensations. Cezanne came under my influence under his Camille Pissarro, 1895. So it's the most accurate description of what happened. I mean, Cezanne was clearly a far more well-known, successful painter at the time. I think he made actually a massive impact on Cezanne. He basically got Cezanne, I think also an incredible work ethic. They did work really hard painting on these things. And Pissarro has obviously got an incredible ability for tone. And I think it was a much more significant impact. It implies they were learning from each other, which I'm sure they were, but I think the point was Cezanne was really learning from Pissarro. And he took that work ethic, and I think also he took the understanding you could make something amazing from quite simple landscapes, as it were. Now, this painting there, I think it's absolutely amazing. Look at that, you got that mad sort of, bottom left-hand corner, you got like a mad sort of block just popping there into what the rest of that landscape is. It's also painted quite lightly, quite loosely. We'll try and get back and have a better look at it in a minute. But you've got that real sort of shape. This one actually is quite interesting. It's far less resolved at this point, where he's got to. I mean, it's still quite sort of, it's not as weird as the other early ones, and it's not as striking as the later ones. By the time you got to this turn in the road, I'm not sure about these dates actually. That's actually 1873, yeah, this is 1881, yeah, so by 1881, he's got much more of his vibe going on. Much more so. Oh, can I get back? I want to get back to this one down here, because I think this is a brilliant one. I'd say this is by far the best one in this room. The Provençale Zola Dam. Art historians think this painting depicts a valley near Aix. The dam that crosses it was designed by the engineer Francois Zola, Émile Zola's father. Oh, quite extraordinary. As a youth, Cezanne regularly explored the Provençale countryside with his school friends Zola and Jean-Baptiste Bayle. Interesting. Art critic Roger Fry, interestingly, praised it as one of the greatest of all Cezanne's landscapes. I think it is a stunner, personally. And I do particularly like this weird little 3D block down there on the left. Almost like something left by an alien or a massive Barbara Hepworth sculpture. Look, I mean, there's not a huge amount of, it's not actually madly detailed either, but it's got a real structure to it. Stunning. Right, let's move on. We've got a few little sketchbooks here. Always quite fun to see these little things. Quite intriguing, these sketches there. Right, let's move on to the next room and see what happens. So this was room 2. Let's head into room 3. Okay, so this is room 3, where they're trying to shoehorn Cezanne into being a sort of a political radical, which, well, I don't think he ever was, even as it says here. Cezanne was never as politically outspoken as his friends. Pizarro was a committed anarchist. I'd never heard that before, but maybe he was. And Zola wrote in support of the Republican movement. Well, Zola wrote all sorts of things. However, recent research has unveiled elements in Cezanne's early work that question his remoteness from issues of modernity. I mean, they lived in a profoundly different world at that time anyway. This room reveals his interest in popular visual culture and political topics, which I think is debatable. We look at 3 works in focus, exploring how he carefully considered the subjects as he chose to depict. In Scipio, we look at the possible influence of abolition on Cezanne, while the Eternal Feminine addresses imagery from the popular press, and the conversation subtly hints at Cezanne's political views. Well, let's have a look at this one. The Eternal Feminine. I think that is, again, one of his absolutely really weird paintings. Look at that. And yeah, I suppose you have got kind of political discussion, argument in it. What are they saying? The Eternal Feminine. Is it a sort of worship of the feminine, shock of the feminine? I'd say it's also related to having a bad day of remembering those other paintings around that time that were criticising the sort of use of prostitutes. Like many of his works, Cezanne did not title this painting in watercolour. They were later titled Eternal Feminine, a phrase used in Europe at the time to describe idealised qualities attributed to women. Cezanne surrounds the female nude in the centre with figures representative of French society, including clerics, merchants, lawyers, entertainers, bankers, and an artist depicting the scene. May have been inspired by Delacroix, Cezanne's favourite 19th century artist. Scholarship suggests that content reflects political cartoons from the 1870s. She's got disturbing red eyes. Interesting, that's a good point. Are they bleeding? Are they horrified? It's interesting. I mean, what are all the people doing? They're using her. They're celebrating her. And you got the priest at the front. There's a lot of stuff about people not being what they are. I mean, I'm sure he was a radical. Well, he obviously was, as you can see by the paintings, but in a way, almost the landscape paintings are more radical. I don't know. Can, with a landscape painting, or as he said, with an apple, can you actually change the world more? And these paintings are weird and awkward. He was an avid reader of contemporary media, probably. During the Franco-Prussian War, Cezanne worked on 3 paintings based on fashion plates from the Parisian magazine La Mode Illustrée. His approach was to create a painterly version of the lithograph, but in the conversation he copied the magazine image and added 2 male figures on the right and a French tricolour flag on the centre left. His inclusion of the flag might represent a rare political patriotic assertion. Hard to tell. They all look like they're whispering about each other, essentially. Scipio, large-scale and ambitious early portrait, depicts the Académie Suisse model known as Scipio. It was made just after the American Civil War, 20 years after France ended slavery. Cezanne was aware of debates about enslavement. Intriguing. This work was owned and treasured by Monet. Interesting. More recently researched by contemporary artist Ellen Gallagher. She writes here about connections she makes between the painting and a photograph of an enslaved man known as Gordon, whose story was told by abolitionists through widely circulated photographs that appeared in the 1860s, including in Harper's Weekly, illustrated here. Intriguing. I suppose he was, as I say, more interested in those. I suppose it's fair to say he was actually more interested in political things to start with. But I suppose what I find interesting is that I think he made more of a when he wasn't directly dealing with the political issues, he made almost changed the world more in a devastating fashion, because obviously Cubism came directly out of Cezanne and possibly his weirdness of the way he would paint stuff, but that is how it changed the way we all look at things. Room 4, so we've moved into family portraits. Cezanne and Marie-Hortense Ficquet met in 1869. Like Cezanne, Ficquet's family moved to Paris from the provinces. Ficquet worked as a bookbinder in her father's shop, defying the social conventions of her middle-class upbringing. She moved in with Cezanne while they were not married and remained his lifelong companion and model. Known as Madame Cezanne, Ficquet and the artist eventually married in 1886, although by this time they were mainly living apart. There are 29 known portraits of Ficquet painted over the next 25 years, more than any of his other models. Her body of work testifies to the continuous closeness, rapport and partnership between the artist and his favourite and most patient model. I've got a little quote up here again. Since my husband is a doctor of law, he did his studies before becoming a painter, he should know. Hortense Cezanne, 1905. Not quite sure what that means. Anyway, so we've got a plate of apples over here. Oh, weird, I mean, look at that. Weird. Fascinating painting. Again, what year is this? 1877. Slightly confused with the years in this because it doesn't really progress, I don't think, in a sort of linear time fashion, because that looks quite early when he's still got that sort of grumpy palette knife kind of style to him. As opposed to over here, 1877. Or maybe I'm wrong. Look at that. That's a stunning painting, isn't it? Both the apples and this were painted at the family's Parisian apartment at Rue de l'Ouest near Montparnasse station. This is one of Cezanne's earliest of Ficquet. She appears dignified yet enigmatic, her expression subtle and not evident to read. Cezanne has skillfully used colour to construct the composition. It's as if every place were aware of all the other places. The interior of the picture vibrates, rises and falls back into itself, and does not have a single unmoving part. I think what you've got to say is it is, well, frankly, I just think rather beautifully painted, especially that skirt. Look at all those different little colours and colour sections, and the greys and the greens. The different colours in it are amazing. And it's such a soft painting, considering it's painted around the same time as those apples, which are really grumpily grunged up. If you look at these apples in comparison, which are grunged up, that is such a soft painting. Quite extraordinary. Beautiful and delicate. Portraits of the artist's son. That's another nice one. I feel a bit sort of Picasso-y in a way. It's really simple. Look at that. Look at those beautiful blues and that mad red thing in the corner. What is that? Like a huge sort of alien creature popping out at you. Beautifully painted. I would say that is incredibly Picasso-y. Another one, Portrait of the Archer's Son. We'll come back to that in a minute. Considered unfinished. And you've got Madame Cezanne in a yellow chair. This is 1880. And we'll come back to that in a moment. Get a better picture of this one first. So this is the other one, considered unfinished. I think that, again, I feel that's quite Picasso. Or when I say Picasso, in reality, it's Picasso who nicked the ideas off him, really, isn't it? This one, not so much. Cezanne depicts his son Paul. The two remain close throughout the artist's life, with Cezanne later trusting his son to run his business affairs. A young Paul seems to have had a particular fascination as the subject for Cezanne, resulting in at least 120 sketches and 15 paintings. Cezanne also painted a still life on the same piece of canvas he used for this portrait. But I think what gets me most, if you look at this, it's got a real... it is mask-like, intentionally and not intentionally, but if you think about it, where Picasso was using all that sort of African masks to sort of make comments on, well, reality or who you are, that's already got that mask vibe to it. And if you look at this, so is this one. Look at that. Stunning painting. Look at those beautiful background colours, the way that dress half appears, and then the face is extraordinary. Edges and contours are established, then disappear. So it says here, foreground objects in the background alternatively overlap and merge. Continuous forms are misaligned from one side of a shape to the other. Peculiar yet deliberate inconsistencies that give Cezanne's painting its vitality and contribute to an inexhaustible sense of fascination. Of course, what I think is a heavy debate is whether or not any of these are deliberate, or whether the inconsistencies are just because he was a bit crazy, or because he worked on it for such a long time, or he wasn't even particularly good at what he was doing. But whatever it is, it creates an absolutely fascinating thing, and somehow that mask-like, I mean, she looks quite wooden. That weird mask, wooden feeling to her is particularly strange and is enigmatic. Right, here we are, and we are in room 5. Okay, L'Estaque, between the sea and the mountains. In his youth, Cezanne holidayed in the southern coastal village of L'Estaque, located on the Bay of Marseille, close to Aix. He had gone to visit with his partner and son, the village becoming a place of refuge. In relative isolation away from the currents of the outside world, the artist could concentrate on his painting. I think it is interesting that Cezanne could also present his father in discovering his relationship with Fique by hiding here. Because the father was difficult about giving him money. It was only when the father died that Cezanne actually became right rich. Otherwise, throughout the rest of it, he had to sort of struggle to survive. I think it is interesting that, I mean, one minute they were saying he's political, the next minute moving into how he isn't political, how he's just, really digging around with his own concerns. So still in room 5. I'm not sure if I just messed up the recording of that bit, but it was quite interesting with Zolo discussing the sort of jagged landscapes of this L'Estaque area, which I think obviously, again, build into that eventual cubist view of things. Isn't that interesting? Some of these paintings, again, they're always just so weird. I mean, would you really choose to paint that big hunk of rocks? I mean, essentially it's a painting of a weird hunk of rocks here on the left. What a bizarre idea. And a tiny bit of blue sky. I don't know, one of those weird paintings. Would you like to have that in your house and look at it? No idea. It's oddly enigmatic. And this is a more sort of, pretty picture like you could imagine somebody painting just on their holiday. The Gulf of Marseille. It's intriguing, isn't it? You still got weird. You see, what I like is that you got that weird chimney. That weird chimney here, clearly painted as a sort of chunky thing. Even the mountains are chunky, even the sea is chunky. It's like some big, heavy slab of stuff. In reality, you need to come back and look at this exhibition again, because it's quite fascinating. And they're all quite, even though it's the same thing, he's playing with different ideas the whole time. Because this one's, again, more, it's 1885, you've got far more, defined 3D building. Okay, moving on in room 5, the viaduct at L'Estaque. This is a wonderful painting, look at that. I think that's the other thing I love about Cezanne, is you get such a 3D sense of space in these pictures. Really stunning. And again, it's just orange and green, really. with a bit of blue, always sticking to those sort of colours. In reality, you need to come back and look at it much, much longer. And look at this one. The other thing is, he's painting the same image again and again, essentially. Same area, but it is different every time. Almost like each time he's trying out some other crazy plan. Look at this one here with the weird sort of colours down the bottom. He keeps sort of almost drifting back to those things at the beginning where it sort of doesn't work very well. But then you got these mad chunky trees. And just to show you the sort of continued, and actually thinking about it, you could never achieve these things without oil paint. Oil paint gives it such a weight on some of them, and then on here like this, the oil paint's put on so lightly. Look at the top of the trees with that light oil paint. I'm not sure if that's me or somebody else. Sorry, I think I've just been beeping some alarm, even though I was quite a long way from it. But yeah, look at that. All that light paint. Sometimes it's so heavily painted, sometimes so light. I do think that's one of the most amazing things about oil paintings. How you can put it on heavy or light. But look, he's constantly experimenting. And look at that little weird house down the bottom. It's got a different distance to it here. That's amazing. Oh, these are quite interesting little sketchbooks. Time to start. Look at that, it's completely mental, that drawing there. Yeah, it's not Cezanne, it's his son, as you'd guess, but so lovely. The artist let his son draw on its pages. Very cool. I like that. I bet those sort of things inspired him, because children have such a much better view of stuff than we do. This is actually really extraordinary. We're going to get the GoPro out of the way so you can see it, but look at that. An extraordinary little drawing. Just little bits and bobs picked out. Almost like the way he would build up his pictures. You can see the whole sketchbook online. It's actually quite cool. Right, let's move. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I was not talking to the thing. I was just saying the sketchbook was amazing. Right, let's head on to room 6. That narrow bit of Tate Modern. Anyway, there he is, Cezanne. Looking particularly grumpy in that picture, just ready to punch you in the head, as he should be. Modern materials. There we go. Kind of a quick thing about he was using the most modern materials known to man. Cezanne engaged with a range of artistic media throughout his career. He worked with oil-based paint, watercolour, pencil, ink, charcoal and mixed media. He made works on canvas, paper and experimented with prints. He also adopted the same commercially produced tools and materials that enabled the Impressionist revolution: light-made dismountable easels, prime ready-to-paint canvases, standard sizes, and in rolls that could be cut out as required. Enabled to work quickly and out of doors. Okay, I suppose fair enough, that is true. That it allowed those things did allow the Impressionists and him to do what they did working out of doors. His preference for a small range of colours, using a particularly rich variety of shades, fascinated his peers and art historians. According to the poet Rainer Maria Rilke, Cezanne used no fewer than 16 shades of blue that he mixed himself. Recent developments in conservation have shed light on the complexity of Cezanne's technique and his engagement with specific media. We can also chart his changing financial circumstances as enabled or prevented his access to high-end materials. So I got quite fascinated with that bit, because as an artist yourself, it's quite interesting that he mixed those blues himself. You've got lovely little visuals here of his watercolour boxes. Everybody can get one like that. Oh, that's a weird one. What's that? X-radiograph image of Cezanne's still life with a water jug. Modern imaging shown here testifies that Cezanne uses a very thin paint, as it does not show up on X-ray. Apart from the more finished form of the jug, the diagonal black line is where the canvas has been creased. It's been roughly cut from its original stretch, and the upper right and lower corners of the original canvas were lost. Interesting. Well, that is interesting. Look at that. It's like watercolour at this stage. And they're rather good, but like, even though it's still got all these beautiful, beautiful different little tonalities in that jug. Oh, and then you come on here. This is one of his watercolours, Still Life with Sliced Watermelon. Look, they're rather good. Look at all that. That just makes you want to go home and do a watercolour painting. That, like all good art, you just want to go and have a go. Look at it. just these colours gently dropped on, but at the same time you've still got a structure, something over here, some kind of shape, a bowl. I guess that is the watermelon. Oh man, and on the GoPro you can actually see it all very clearly. When you step back, it zooms into reality. It's absolutely stunning little painting, actually, because all those beautiful colours are just appearing out of it, and it just sort of drifts into reality. Oh look, it's a good picture of Cezanne. Looks less grumpy now he's older. And here, lithograph on paper, the large bathers. Oh, a lithograph, yeah, interesting. The lithographs commissioned by Cezanne's dealer Ambrose Vollard, who put together lavish print portfolios for the modern artists he represented. As well as bringing financial benefits, the print portfolios also made Cezanne's work available to a wider public. It's based on the Bathers at Rest painting now in the Barnes Foundation, Philadelphia. Gained notoriety during the Kayabot Bequest press campaign. Anyway, those Bather paintings are fascinating, like the one in the National Gallery. Right, let's keep going. Room 7, this is like a still life room, which is rather wonderful, actually. Still life, continuous research, this I think makes quite a lot of sense. Cezanne's most focused and intense investigations took place in the highly controlled and isolated environment of his studio. Here he would experiment with and elevate the genre of still life painting, traditionally considered the least important of the art genres. In contrast to painting outdoors, in the studio, Cezanne could control his subject, staging, arranging, propping and tilting the objects to desired effect. Interesting. Cracking spot to do your painting, but the paintings in here are wonderful. Look at these, really genuinely bizarre. Look at this, a group of 3 still lifes, these 3 down here. It says here, exemplifies Cezanne's lifelong quest for perfection through a deliberately narrow range of subjects and objects. I think the other thing is, if you keep painting the same things, there's Graham Crowley, you can see him loads of videos on the Art Top 10 channel. As he said, once you keep painting the same thing again and again, even the exact picture, you can fling away the worries of what it is you're painting, so you don't have to worry about that jug, what it looks like, that curtain, what it looks like. You can just start worrying about the colours, texture of the paint. You really begin to worry about other little things. Look, like here, he's playing around, contrasting that bright orange with the jug. Interesting. He's playing with the way the apples are laid around as well. Look at the apples on the right here. Almost completely implausible, that collection of apples. That one at the top is literally could not really exist. Balancing there, it would roll off. And the table itself, as you can see from this left-hand corner, is pushed up towards you. Everything would roll off. And yet the whole space of it is weirdly flat. I mean, that is the absolute genius of Cezanne. Whether by accident or intention, maybe he's just really trying to paint what he saw. But look at this table as well. The whole thing's veering off to the left. That plate of fruit at the back is actually just hovering in the air. Oh, I've made it beep again by looking at it. And it's all madness, isn't it? It's all just complete madness. How it holds together. Because it doesn't. And then look at this one. Then you've got the table flat, horizontal at you. Insane. And often you've got these apples pointing at you, which is the weirdest way to have them, because then you get the dot in the centre. I mean, stunning. With Cezanne, fruits cease entirely to be edible. They become such very real things, so simply indestructible in their obstinate presence. Rainer Maria Rilke, 1907. There's even more to it than that. I mean, it's just, like, again, all these things are sort of rolling around. When Rilke first saw this work in 1907, he was particularly struck by it. Between the covers, bourgeois cotton blue and the wall, which is suffused with a light, cloudy bluishness, an exquisite large grey glazed ginger pot holding its own. In the blue corner, some apples have partly rolled out from a porcelain dish, whose white is determined by the blanket's blue. This rolling of red into blue is an action that seems to arise naturally from the colourful events in the picture. Rilke emphasises how Cezanne uses colour rather than light to activate forms on the two-dimensional surface. Well, that is actually rather a good point. There is not much light. They're not Monet. It's not like a painting of light. It's a painting of, well, it's the colours within itself and the shapes, I suppose, the way it's put together. It's fascinating. You need to look at it longer to really work out what he was doing. But I mean, look, you've obviously got poetic elements between the sort of the strap around the bottle of wine, the sort of the jars sort of ropey bit, and then the patterns within the patterned cloth and the cloth itself. All these little patterns rolling through. The plate is tipping over. The apples should be rolling off. That jug you're seeing from the top, and this other jug you're seeing from a different angle. It's purposefully juggling all these things up to mess with you. Once again here, you go, oh, look at that. It's actually quite fascinating, because that is so much lighter painted. Look, you see, so this one's all heavily overworked, this one's sort of light. You still got things falling off the table, sliding around. Oh, and this is a classic one here. That's such a weirdly amazing painting. Look, he's been painting the onions and stuff for such a long time. They've started to grow. Look at them, they're starting to grow away there. Oh, that's not me for once. Look at those, stunning. And again, it's all vertiginous. Look, you've got the whole sense of space, and this painting flies up to the back. Wow. In a massive swirling drop. I mean, that is cubism, basically, where you see everything from a different angle at once. And this is a much looser one again. Whether or not this would have gone on longer or is finished, I do not know, but it is extraordinary. Cezanne's studio contained traditional artistic props, as it says here on the wall, such as plaster casts of écréché, a sculpture showing the musculature of the human body, and of antique sculptures. He believed the small cube in these paintings was copied from a work by 17th century sculptor Pierre Puget, the first Provençale artist to gain fame in Paris. Interesting. Very interesting. Then you come here, something completely different. Oh, look at this. Absolutely mad in relation to the rest of it. I mean, interesting. There's a big painting, but the flowers I don't know, they're not quite as weird as those still lifes, which are genuinely weird. I think the thing I still get out of this is you just need to keep painting. You've got to keep doing it. Because you just will not find out things if you don't keep doing it, especially doing the same thing. It's only then you can really pull it together. Even that disappearing person in the background's rather amazing. Weird. Then the face again is a mask, very Picasso masky. Room 8, Mont Sainte-Victoire. Cezanne's favourite and most emblematic landscape subject was Mont Sainte-Victoire, a limestone mountain, you can see there, that dominates excellent surroundings. 80 times in his paintings, and you've got to say, the paintings of Mont Sainte-Victoire are amazing. Right, I suddenly realise this thing's absolutely huge, the exhibition that is, and we are not getting very far through it in the time we've done so much, and I'm meant to be looking after the exhibition I've curated, which is in the back of Wimbledon Library in Merton Art Space, so I better try and get on with it. Chestnut trees, Jeanne de Beaufort, stuff like this, I just think it's amazing. There's undoubtedly a huge amount he's left out of that picture, because those trees would have been far more complicated. But look, you've got the trees, you've got the blocky buildings, you've got look at that, you've got purposeful ziggy-zaggy colours going down the bottom. Rather interesting, quite stunning actually. Also quite lightly done, not fussed over, and yet still rather good. Again, all these really good artists don't seem to fuss it too much. It's almost more about the idea than the realisation of it. I don't know if that's quite the right way to say it. Look at that one, another one. Look at those amazing trees on the left. Those beautiful, beautiful colours in the sky. And the little 3D buildings vanishing, and that huge mountain lurking there, leaning over you. And then again, you see, look, that one, it's quite loosely, almost watercolour-y painted in the oil paint here. And then you come over here, it's far more defined ground. He's consistently shifting the ideas, shifting what he's thinking about. Sorry. And oh, look at that one. That's quite a simple little one. where the whole thing's almost falling together. And then you come over here and you got something that's much murkier, chunkier. Moved to a new studio in the hills north of Aix. Just above the studio, the descending terraced fields of the Arc River offer an uninterrupted view of the horizon and the peak of Mont Sainte-Victoire. Heavily reworked. Quite interesting, this one. Actually, you can see him digging away with ideas on that. Weird, quite different use of the paint there. Quite chunky, heavy and thick. And that is the interesting thing, isn't it? How these things just keep changing. Weirdly enough, quite up here from Cezanne, I need to know some geology, how Sainte-Victoire's roots work, the colours of geological soils. Such things move me. Quite extraordinary. Never have thought you'd say that. This is a lovely one here, but I actually really like this one here. I think this painting is absolutely stunning. Forest floor, look at it, it's just so zingy. The whole thing is vibrating and flinging around like you're being sucked through the air. With those mad little brushstrokes and the trees are vibrating, and it's like you're hurtling at a vortex of mad speed through the landscape. Just extraordinary. I mean, it's just really interesting. Really interesting. This room is wonderful, and you need to spend more time, more and more interested in just how creative and original he is all the time with the different things he's doing. Right, we're going to move straight into room 9. Now, I'm pretty sure that big bather picture over there, I think I'm allowed to film it, but I'm not allowed to do anything dramatic. No, this big one's alright, this one here, but the other one, I think yes. See? Wide shots only, certain things you have to look at in a certain way. The bather, we have a quick glimpse of him over there. It's a wide shot only one. But this, which I'm pretty sure is from the National Gallery, unless I've gone insane. There's a National Gallery in London. Yes, I think it is. Yeah, National Gallery London. This painting is just mental. One of his late ones. Cezanne turned to large-scale painting early in his career, when he still aspired to present his work at the Paris Salon. He returned to monumental compositions around 1895, concentrating solely on the traditional genre of nudes depicted in an imaginary landscape. He created 3 paintings known as large bathers, reinterpreting this classical subject in a radical new way. The bathers are liberated from mythological narrative and the central connotations of classical compositions. They are instead experiments in the synthesis of landscape and the human figure, a celebration of our union with nature. Maybe. I mean, certainly they look very... they've got a monumental look to them. These paintings are, again, genuinely weird. It would also appear to have a sort of what could be a Madonna in the right-hand corner. This one I had never noticed before was dropping like a little bag of apples, almost referencing the still life pictures. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I know they're amazing paintings. I don't quite know why. You've got the 2 people staring out in the back. I'm sure there was something about when Cezanne was young, he and Zola would, would innocently just skip naked through the countryside. I always feel there's a bit of sort of Wordsworthian love of nature and this and simplicity, and maybe just hoping for a sort of more idealistic world. But there's so many weird things in it. And the faces are weird. Every bit of it's weird, but quite extraordinary. I mean, they're sort of almost, I don't know, it's people looking mysterious. Somebody massaging the feet. This one looking mystically from the background. This sort of weird blue figure in the background. This one almost sort of praying towards the landscape. And it's just a weird but amazing painting. I mean, unbelievably memorable. And you could look at it for years. Just extraordinary. Coming around here, bathers at rest. Now these ones are really weird. 1875, so you've still got this kind of vibe going on with these bathers earlier. So he's obviously fascinated with this kind of sort of idyllic lifestyle. And then again, you've got experimentation in how they're done. This one's quite nicely thick paint. This one's much looser, like a sort of almost like an oil sketch. And this one is absolutely bizarre. I personally doubt it's even done by Cezanne. Looks absolutely weird. The figures have all changed shape, and it's a weird story. We're almost telling each other off. Absolutely bizarre. Weird. Come over here. This is quite a strange one. Boy resting. That's quite interesting. It's again, you got the whole vibe of it. Just boy's just going to roll straight off that landscape there. See what it says? Cezanne reportedly boasted, this is what it says on the wall, obviously. Cezanne reportedly boasted to his young poet friend Jacques-M Gasquet that he wanted to make Impressionism something solid and enduring, like the art museums, which it did say. This informed the artist's lifelong engagement with the theme of bathers, which follows a long classical tradition of depicting nude figures in imaginary landscapes. Cezanne's bathers are inspired by his sketching trips to the Louvre, that first appeared in early tense and violent works. Also a real and modern approach of working through appropriating other imagery. Interesting, it said that the big paintings, like the one at the end we looked at to start with, were in Cezanne's studio the day he died. A testimony to his continuous research and experimentation through this theme. Interesting. We'll come down here, so we can't look at that bathing one again, apart from glimpsing past it, so we won't dig into that one. Although it has to be said that the bathers one that we've only been able to see in a sort of wide angle, it's over to my left here, we can't look at it again. Well, we could, but only in a sort of wide shot. Obviously that must have inspired Picasso dramatically, because it's so similar. And this bathers one here, again, I got a lighter, looser painted picture. Again, the bath is absolutely extraordinary. Totally fascinating. You got this mad painting there. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. There you go. There's your wide shot of that one that I think is so Picasso-y. How Picasso would have done anything without Cezanne, I don't know. Just completely amazed that it's not discussed. Cezanne reportedly admitted he was too... We can see what it says about this model, and you can see the picture of the model there. Cezanne reportedly admitted he was too shy to hire models for his paintings of nudes. Instead, he relied on studying sculptures and paintings in museums. For this work, the innovative, unusual source is a photograph of a male model taken in the studio who adopts a traditional academic pose. Cezanne carefully studied his stance and pensive demeanour. He depicts the figure as a bather complete with modern underwear against a backdrop of what might be a single origin X. Cezanne fuses the figure and landscape through a flattened perspective, a muted palette, balanced with a precisely structured composition, giving both equal presence. I have to say, Cezanne's one of those painters I can't quite decide if he knew what he was doing. He was just sort of these mad ideas to see what would happen. Was he really carefully organising the... I mean, you know that Picasso obviously took what he did and then carefully recreated it to create these strange senses of space. But whether or not Cezanne was planning that or not, you can't tell. Then you look at these then, these little drawings are absolutely stunning. Amazingly good drawings. That does make you question. I mean, look at that, Hercules resting, they're beautiful. It's quite interesting. But then you see, you get to these. Now, these are the more interesting things. That's 1874. Hercules resting 1897. I almost wish it was just in historical order, the exhibition. But I mean, that is such a weird picture. That's earlier. I mean, the arm is all a bit strange. All sorts of things about it are strange. And yet, it's far more interesting than something done well. Well, this is a fantastic little picture. I've seen that many times before, but look at that. I like this one. Don't know why it's not right in the other room. I think it's rather wonderful. Oh, owned by Matisse. Yeah, I remember. So Matisse, I think Matisse almost bankrupted himself. Oh, here we go. It says here. Matisse, placing himself under considerable financial burden, Matisse purchased his painting from Vollard in 1899. When he later gifted the work to the Petit Palais Museum in Paris, he wrote to the curator, "In the 37 years I've owned this canvas, it has sustained me morally in the critical moments of my venture as an artist. I have drawn from it my faith and my perseverance." Cezanne's bathers influenced Matisse's practice as a painter, and similarly proportioned figures appear in his sculptural work. Oh yeah, you really can see the sculptures in that. What an extraordinary picture. I mean, look at this massive, weird, sort of double-sized back on this person here. And yet it works, and these trees are always just sort of abstract paint. Fascinating, but a weird picture. And you can see how you could just look at that forever, wondering what in the world is going on. And here's another bather, 5 bathers. I haven't seen this one before. This is really weird. I mean, look at the people in that, the person in the centre rolling over backwards. That's quite interesting. Picasso, here it says here, Picasso encountered Cezanne's bather compositions at the 1907 Salon d'Automne exhibition in Paris. The theme left a strong impression on the Spanish artist and has been cited as an inspiration for his later paintings. Picasso would go on to develop the new artistic movement of Cubism, at last, which was indebted to Cezanne's innovative approach to colour and composition. 50 years later, Picasso would eventually purchase 5 bathers. Reflecting on Cezanne's influence, he once explained that Cezanne was my one and only master. It was the same for all of us. He was like our father. It was he who protected us. Interesting. He and Matisse both so protected. Is that because he was so out there they could then do whatever they wanted? Bather descending into the water, owned by Jasper Johns. It's quite interesting. Oh, so I say 3 bathers also owned by Jasper Johns. Intriguing. Gotta say, mad stuff. This room is 10. I hadn't quite grasped it as a room. Cezanne, the artist. Throughout his life, Cezanne turned to museums to study and draw sculptures and paintings from the past. Some of these drawings are displayed in this room. In his bather scenes, Cezanne inserted figures and poses he had carefully studied, adapting them within the new compositions. He once said, "We turn to the admirable works handed down to us through the ages, where we can find comfort and support, like the plank for the struggling bather." Interesting. So I've got to say, this is quite interesting. I didn't realise actually, but in turn, generations of artists have been drawn towards Cezanne bathers for comfort and support in their own practice. Proportionally, artists have since purchased more of Cezanne's bather works, such as this one, than any other subject. Henry Moore once owned 3 bathers, which we encountered in room 2. Here we see works from the collections of artists such as Pablo Picasso, Henri Matisse, Jasper Johns. Matisse said, "In moments of doubt, when I was still searching for myself, frightened sometimes by discoveries, I thought, if Cezanne is right, I am right, because I knew that Cezanne made no mistake." No idea they all owned the bather ones. Really weird, actually, but quite fascinating. No idea they were the ones they possibly found more inspiration from, which I find quite extraordinary. I thought it would have been the still life ones, personally. Anyway, let's moving on. So here we are, room 11, the last one in the show. And intriguing. Quite a lot of stuff here I maybe don't know about. Slow Homecoming, this room's called. 1899 was a watershed in Cezanne's life, marked by irreversible change. Following his mother's death in 1897, the family estate Jardin de Provençale was sold. Later that year, the artist sold the contents of his Paris studio to dealer Ambrose Vollard, who reputedly destroyed many of his early works. He also designed his first purpose-built studio in Le Louvre. I think Le Louvre, is it? But I think the other interesting things last year, Cezanne's life had documented in most detail. He was visited by peers and younger artists keen to pay respects to the legendary painter. Very interesting. Oh, look at that one. So these are a bit more late Cezanne, you could say, I suppose. It says here, it's thick oils and delicate watercolours is how it talks about it. This is 1900. It's quite an interesting painting. It is more disintegrated than what's before. Still pushing it, and then you've got a watercolour here. Is that water? Yeah, watercolour and graphite. That's more realistic, weirdly enough, but the trees are more kind of Cezanne-y. Quite sure which way to go around this room. We'll start from over here. Man wearing a straw hat. There's quite a few of these. Oh look, this is quite interesting actually. Look, you see, once again, it's a benefit doing the same thing. This one, almost quite realistic, quite normal. Interesting. Yeah, he's still using similar colours, the greens, blues, pinky colour, sticking to those. And you get the oil painting kind of version, as it were. Interesting enough, in the oil painting, the tree and the curved section behind become much more solid, as does the person. It's that solidity he gives everything. But then you move over to this one, and yet again you've got another oil painting where it's much watercolour. And what are the dates on these? This is 1906. 1905, 1905 to 6, 5 to 6, 1906. Interesting. It's all around the same time, and again, playing with the ideas and the way the paint's used. This is Etel Adnan, poet and writer and artist who lived and worked in Lebanon, France and the US. You've got her chit-chat here saying, of all my experiences of Cezanne's works, the most haunting have been his portraits of the garden Vallier. This is a simple man, maybe the closest to Cezanne. He's sitting on a small wall or on a chair. Has a thin face and penetrating eyes, and is sunk in a meditation. The garden, as Vallier's portraits, is Cezanne's ultimate mountain, his echo-homent, his real testament, she says. The gardener sitting cross-legged, looking from his bench at the master's studio, lost in his thoughts. And Cezanne, watching him, is overwhelmed. No philosopher's portrait has ever reached the evocative power of this one. Interesting. I love this painting here. Chateau Noir. And then there's the Devil's Castle. But look at that. You've got a mad sort of sense of light and those trees and the structure again. It's interesting. When you start painting trees, it sort of feels like it's such a time-consuming thing, but they don't feel torturous here. Then look at this. It's disintegrating. Almost sort of falling to pieces just as slabs of colour, not as the heavily organised thing as you've seen before. Oh, look at these mad things. Look at that. No idea if that's finished or just started. Mont Sainte-Victoire from Melon. Then you've got a watercolour version of it. Just a few colours, really light. Interesting. Got a chit-chat from Philip de Barlow about this one. I recall my first experience of looking at Cezanne's Mont Sainte-Victoire when I was a student at Chelsea School of Art. It was 1961 at the Tate Gallery, now Tate Britain. She had a tutorial for Microandries. Line is a human invention. There are no lines in nature anywhere. Go and look at Cezanne's watercolour at the Tate Mont Sainte-Victoire and look at how little there is, the economy of colour, line and space. Where an empty space is in fact full. And I've been back to look at Mont Sainte-Victoire, each time a shock, comparable to listening to Beethoven's Opus 133, or being caught in extreme weather, wind, rain, snow, things that disappear, where remembering fails the sentience of the experience. Interesting, because there are loads of lines in this. There are no lines in nature or anywhere. Line is a human invention. Not entirely sure about that. What about Horizon? Obviously this is quite a sort of three skulls. Quite intriguing. Especially you've got the, I mean that's the best thing, you've got this watercolour version and you've got this oil version. And watercolours, if they do have that sort of inverse hidden space, then the oils have this thick heaviness to them. It's absolutely fascinating. The differences. And then we get back to some later still lifes. Where everything looks slightly more organised, weirdly enough, although that jug is still tipping over. And that table is rolling everything off, but it's staying on there. A weird thing. Beautiful colours in there, and all sort of merged into one weird thing. All those fruit become one weird thing. That curtain does as well. And you come around here and it's reds. Quite strange, these late paintings. You've got this sort of lightness. In the last of his life, Cezanne produced a number of large-scale still lifes in watercolour. Translucency, he was exploring, they say, translucency, luminosity and the boundaries of colour. Often returned to the same compositions, rendering them in washes and oil, grappling with the subject to achieve realisation of his experience. I paint as I see, as I feel. But that one, it's quite different. It's quite sort of worked up, that one. Weirdly enough, some of these seem more like sort of straightforward paintings, which is an odd thing to say. I like that one. Quite strange, these later ones. Almost look more normal. I can't quite work out what he's doing. In reality, even though it's still on the same thing of drifting between the watercolour and the paint. Strange, but quite extraordinary. One slightly strange thing about this final room is they've suddenly gone for these really dark walls, almost to make it look like, he's approaching the end of his life and stuff like that, which I find actually rather presumptuous, because it's pressing you to see these things in a different way. If you're still on the up with your creativity, why do you need to have this kind of vibe to it? Interesting quote. I believe in the logical development of what we see and feel through the study of nature. Techniques are merely the means of making the public feel what we ourselves feel and making us acceptable. Intriguing quote. I have to think about that for a while. Interesting. I'd love to see this room with different coloured walls, so you're not forced to look at it as what he did at the end of his life, but just what he did whenever. In some ways, is he galvanising the things he's found and making them more solid, even more solid? Intriguing question. We'll say something like this still life. It's more sort of heavily painted, but let's take it out of this room and see what it looks like. Well, as ever, Cezanne is a miracle and probably one of the best painters ever. The show, what would I say? Well, it's obviously brilliant. You just get to see all these Cezannes. Obviously, you've got a bit of shoehorning of stuff into it to try and make it more relevant to today, because you can't just have a show of Cezanne because his paintings are good. You've got to have some stuff about why it's here. But other than that, it's really cool. Beautiful paintings of these landscapes in here. Really extraordinary stuff. It's just, as a painter, it's just the most amazing thing. It really does show you how just repeatedly working at stuff gives you more and more ideas. It lets you change the world. I can't believe, weirdly enough, there's such a minimal discussion of Cubism. Surely that is the most overriding thing he created, basically. Changing the way you look at the world, changing the idea of a one-point perspective to the fact that you're looking at things from different angles, as you see in those still lives. You're looking at it from 4 or 5 different angles at once. It's a human moving around, not somebody nailed by 1 foot to the floor in a field. Can't believe that's not mentioned in here, because that is the most radical thing that came out of Cezanne. As developed by Picasso and Braque, obviously, but that's what he was doing first. Anyway, fascinating exhibition. I think you probably need to spend more time looking at it, and I've been chatting about it so much. I haven't really looked at it as much as I'd like to, so definitely need to come back. You can come back here and just spend days wandering around this thing and seeing what you learn. And as ever, it makes you want to go and do your own stuff, which is always the best thing. Anyway, so I would say it's rather wonderful. Come and see it here. And as ever, I'd hire a fizz, Auf Wiedersehen, bye-bye. Like and subscribe to this, my other channel, arttop10.com. Oh, sorry, my other channel. Got it wrong there. Like and subscribe both this, my other channel, Travel Dog, which is, food and travel. Anyway, au revoir, Auf Wiedersehen, at our fizz, bye-bye.